Who would you like to see take a huge swing and trade up to get the Diors? The Broncos, who sit at 12.
You have Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, and at 12, you're hoping Bo Nix is still there. The Cardinals can slide back to that 12th spot in the round, still get a marquee wide receiver.
I know a lot of you guys are not going to believe this, but the Denver Broncos actually have a plan. And after sitting with it and looking over what they're doing, the plan kind of makes sense, but at the same time is very comical if you think about it. However, there's one mistake that they can make that could ruin everything for this rebuilding Broncos team. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. We're currently racing my basketball channel, The Flight Mike, to 1 million subscribers. They currently have a little bit of a lead over us, but I think we're gonna end up winning. Now that we get all that out of the way, look right over here, you'll see all of these wonderful human beings that have been able to make some money by playing Prize Picks. And I give away my picks for free each and every day on my Instagram at The Flight Mike and Snapchat at Flight Mike Snap. And right now they're hooking up my subscribers fat when you use my promo code Flight Mike when you sign up for Prize Picks. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The Denver Broncos have been a caricature of a football team over the past couple of years, going all in the summer of 2022 on Russell Wilson, which easily became one of the worst trades in NFL history. The Broncos traded Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, Charles Cross, Boye Mafe, Tyreek Smith, Devin Witherspoon, and Derek Hall for Russell Wilson. They were so convinced that this was the right move for the franchise that they signed Russell Wilson to a $260 million contract when he had 2 years remaining on his deal. And if they had kept him, then this contract would have actually aged pretty well. But the thing is, they cut him before the contract even kicked in, which allowed Russell Wilson to be able to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers on a veteran minimum contract. The Pittsburgh Steelers have 2 starting caliber QBs that are either on a rookie scale contract or a veteran minimum contract. Look out for Pittsburgh, because I think this is a year where they could potentially be the most competitive that they've been since the Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger era. With that being said, this is one of the worst trades in NFL history. And it's even more comical when you consider the fact that Sean Payton was essentially brought in to save Russell Wilson after a bad year under Nathaniel Hackett. And Sean Payton originally retired from the New Orleans Saints because, well, they didn't really have much of a future. They were in salary cap hell, and he wanted to escape because he didn't want to deal with a rebuild that included a team that had no assets at all whatsoever. And essentially what he did was move on to a team that ended up being in salary cap hell, but didn't really have any assets at all whatsoever either. The Broncos have been able to get pennies on the dollar for some of their biggest investments, trading Jerry Jeudy to the Cleveland Browns for a 5th round pick and a 6th round pick, only to see Jerry Jeudy get extended for a 3-year, $58 million contract with the Browns. And that's not to say that the Cleveland Browns historically are known for giving out good contracts. In the very beginning, I decimated the Denver Broncos for this decision. Cutting Russell Wilson imposed one of the craziest cap hits for a player that is not even on the roster in NFL history. $53 million against the cap, which makes it impossible for the Denver Broncos to be competitive at all whatsoever this year. The good news is, at least the Denver Broncos aren't in a situation like the Carolina Panthers, who were the worst team in the NFL this past year, but traded the #1 overall pick to the Chicago Bears as a result of a decision that they made the year prior. The Broncos still have their draft picks, and they have a plethora of needs. Currently, the Denver Broncos are picking at number 12, and there's a lot of directions that they can go with this particular pick. And if they make the wrong decision, it could set their franchise back by years. If you take a look at the Denver Broncos roster, the most glaring need is clearly the quarterback position, and maybe even the wide receiver position a little bit, but I would say the quarterback position takes the cake. Then it's going to be the cornerback that's going to be partnering with Patrick Surtain. Before you look at edge rusher, they used to have Bradley Chubb, but they traded him to the Miami Dolphins during the 2022 NFL trade deadline. With all that being said, what direction do the Denver Broncos go here? Well, there's a trade that was proposed that could without a doubt ruin this team. It was a trade done in an ESPN mock draft by Matt Miller, with a lot of respect and love for Matt Miller. And I'm not saying that Matt Miller suggesting this makes him an idiot, because at the end of the day, a mock draft draft isn't what you should do. A mock draft is what you think is going to happen. And we'd like to think that every football team makes rational football decisions, but alas, that is never the case. I'm looking at you, Denver. So that being said, the proposed trade by Matt Miller here is a trade that would set the Denver Broncos back so far that I don't think they'd ever be able to recover from this. In our last video, I discussed how a massive NFL trade was about to come. And I said the primary candidate to trade up in this year's NFL draft is without a doubt the Minnesota Vikings. They have the 11th pick, the 23rd pick. They still have picks in the future as well. They essentially mortgaged their later round draft picks, like their second round picks, in order to upgrade to first round picks. And the reason that they were able to do this is because their trade partner thought that there's a chance that these picks could be more valuable next year. So I can understand why a trade like this went down. And in the case of the Minnesota Vikings, it makes a lot of sense to go out and do whatever you can to trade up for a quarterback, because you can make a very legitimate argument that the right quarterback will set this team up for contention for the next 5 years. You look at the Minnesota Vikings roster and they're set at the running back position, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. They have a top 5 tight end. You can make an argument that TJ Hawkinson's a top 3 tight end. They were able to bring back Harrison Smith. Their defensive backs are decent, but they're not incredible. They have Jerry Tillery at the edge, and there is upgrades that could be made defensively, but for the most part, there's no question about it. You get the right quarterback to come in here and get coached by Josh McCown, and also has Sam Darnold to lean on for some veteran leadership, and there's no question in my mind that over the next 4 to 5 years, the Minnesota Vikings will at least have a fighting chance to compete in their division. It's a very competitive division, by the way. Now, you need to compare that situation to the Denver Broncos, in which in this mock draft, there's a proposed trade by Matt Miller that has the Denver Broncos trading up from the number 12 pick and giving up a 2025 first round pick and a 2026 first round pick to the Arizona Cardinals, trade up to number 4 overall, and with that pick, Matt Miller projects the Broncos taking Michigan quarterback JJ McCarthy.
It was like this. We are going to see a lot of phone calls, a lot of activity, because some team is going to be left out. Whether it's the Raiders or maybe it's even the Saints, someone is going to try to get to this number 4 spot. I think Sean Payton is the person who is just aggressive enough, maybe crazy enough to do this. Now, interesting, Denver doesn't have a second round pick. They traded it to get Russell Wilson. So they would actually have to give more future first rounders, which I think would be enticing to the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals can slide back to that 12th spot in the round, still get a marquee wide receiver, can maybe get help on the defensive line later in the draft, and they would have 2 first-round picks. And then I think for Denver, you got to go get that guy, because at 12 right now, you have Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, and at 12, you're hoping Bo Nix is still there. So I think if you're Denver, this is the time to be aggressive. We've all heard Arizona is willing to do what they did last year, which is take an offer that would blow them away and move back and still maybe get the player.
Now, I want to be abundantly clear here, because I'm not the type of person that'll tell you a quarterback is going to be a definitive draft bust before he's taken a snap in the NFL. It's very difficult to evaluate quarterback prospects, and a lot of it has to do with the situation that quarterbacks are placed in. I've been on record multiple times saying that I don't think Mac Jones was the problem in New England. I think the fact that he had 3 wide receivers in Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, and Juju Smith-Schuster that were in the bottom 10 for wide receiver separation statistics, and the fact that he played behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL may have contributed to his demise. And although I do think there are quarterbacks that come out of the NFL draft that absolutely stink and shouldn't have gotten the opportunity to begin with, I'm looking at you, Mitchell Trubisky. I think a lot of a quarterback's success is dictated based upon the environment he's placed in and based upon how prepared he is when he takes that first snap. And that's why you see success stories like Jordan Love, who sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years, or Patrick Mahomes, who sat behind Alex Smith for 1 year, or Carson Palmer, who sat behind John Kitna for a year, or Dak Prescott, who sat behind Tony Romo for 4 games in the preseason. With that being said, in this particular instance, I cannot think of a bigger disaster in the NFL for any player than the Denver Broncos trading up to the number 4 overall pick. As a matter of fact, I don't think the Denver Broncos should be trying to trade up. I think the Denver Broncos should be doing everything in their power to trade back as many times as humanly possible. This is a team that has a huge hole at the quarterback position. I mean, currently their depth chart indicates that they have Jarrett Stidham or Ben DiNucci starting for them. Now, I have good news for Denver Broncos fans, because for the very first time in a long time, it seems like there's a coherent plan. But the problem is, in order for this plan to be successful, the Broncos are going to have to do something that they haven't done since the end of the Peyton Manning era, and that's the fact that they need to be patient. Look, Broncos fans, I hate hate to break it to y'all, but the Denver Broncos are currently in the most competitive division in football, at least one of them, the AFC West. There's no worse division to be in than in the same division as Patrick Mahomes. But that aside, the Las Vegas Raiders are trending upwards. They're clearly a better team than you. The LA Chargers are also trending upwards once they draft Malik Neighbors with the 5th overall pick, which I'm assuming they will, but even if they don't, I'm sure they're going to be just fine with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman coming through. So in this particular instance, why would you give up your 2025 first round pick and 2026 first round pick in order to move into the top 4 to select JJ McCarthy when you already have $53 million of dead cap going against you, and JJ McCarthy will only have Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and wait, Philip Dorsett? Philip Dorsett still in the NFL to throw the football to. Now the plan here should be to take either an edge rusher or a cornerback at the 12th overall pick. If you could trade back, even better. I'm sure there will be an opportunity to trade back if a quarterback slips to number 12, and you could convince a team that you really want to take a quarterback at number 12, which the Broncos should be able to do that. Take a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe you hit on the Russell Wilson or Dak Prescott of this year's NFL draft, or maybe you get like the next coming of Jalen Hurts. You never know if you don't try, and it's not nearly as much of an investment. You don't need to give up multiple first round picks to take a prospect in the 2nd round. Your risk becomes severely reduced as a result of that. And then the light at the end of the tunnel for the Denver Broncos isn't this offseason, but it's next offseason. Cutting Russell Wilson for the Denver Broncos was essentially the same thing as when the Chicago Bears traded Khalil Mack to the LA Chargers and they started to shed a plethora of salary. At the time, Bears fans were really upset. Why are we trading Khalil Mack? Why are we trading Roquan Smith? Why aren't we getting first round picks for these types of players? Well, the plan was to clear up as much cap space as you can for the following offseason. And look, clearing up cap space isn't going to be enough, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, and that's what the Denver Broncos are trying to do here. As it stands, they currently have $20 million in cap space this year, but that's because they have so many cap liabilities. Next year, however, things start to get a little bit better. There's way less dead cap. Russell Wilson comes off of the books, and they'll have $93.7 million in cap space. They'll probably move on from Cortland Sutton that year because they could save $14 million against the cap, and they'd only take a $3.8 million dead money hit. And then the year after, this team could potentially look completely different in 2026. If I'm the Denver Broncos, I'm probably taking a prospective quarterback in the 2nd round this year, or even riding it out with Jarrett Stidham just so we could have a horrific year. Take our QB of the future next year and try to figure out other aspects of our team, at least during the draft this year. And that's the plan. By the time you find your QB of the future, maybe next year you take Quinn Ewers or Shedeur Sanders. That quarterback will be in a significantly better position to compete. Sean Payton will even get his opportunity to pick his guy, and the Denver Broncos will have the cap space to build around said player. And they won't have to give up multiple first round picks to do so. But at the same time, apparently Sean Payton thinks Bo Nix is the next coming of Drew Brees, so this could all go to shit, and I could be wrong, and the Denver Broncos could continue chasing the pot of gold in each and every quarterback prospect. So let me know if you're a Broncos fan in the comment section down below. What do you think the Denver Broncos should do? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.